It's 6 p.m. on a Monday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Choi. Let us begin with the headlines. North Korea targets the email accounts of more than 90 government officials from South Korean ministries. An investigation is underway to see if state secrets have been leaked. For the first time in more than a decade, South Korea extends the trading hours of its stock, currency, and gold markets. The extra half hour is expected to help the nation's benchmark Kospi break the 2100 mark. But hopes of a recovery for the country's outbound shipments are crushed after showing some positive gains. South Korea's exports returned to double-digit dips in July. North Korea launches another hacking attack on the South. Prosecutors revealed the email accounts of government officials and journalists working in Pyongyang-related ministries have been compromised. Hackers based in China who are from the regime were behind these cyber attacks. Connie Kim has our top story.
An email has been sent from what appears to be an online portal website. Once the user clicks on the attached file, it requests the user to change his or her email password, and when they do so, the information is promptly sent to hackers. South Korean prosecutors said Monday this is one of the phishing websites North Korea set up to target 90 officials from the Foreign Affairs, Defense, and Unification ministries in the first 6 months this year. Prosecutors say the hackers stole more than 50 email passwords and are looking into whether any state secrets or other critical data was obtained through the hacks. The IP addresses used by the hackers trace back to Seoul in China's northeast. The prosecution says the hackers are believed to be the same group that hacked into Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Corporation in 2014, stealing internal data that included plant blueprints and the personal information of employees. The hack attack was deemed by a Unification Ministry official a grave provocation threatening national security, calling on the North to immediately halt such actions. The official added that one business email account from the ministry has also been hacked, but no official document is known to have gone into the hands of the hacking agent. Another government official dismissed concerns of official document leaks, saying business email hackings does not necessarily mean access to official documents. So far, there have not been any confirmed cases of ministry internet hackings. The prosecution has requested users to monitor login records and change passwords frequently to further deter additional hacking attempts. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
South Korea's ruling and opposition parties are seeking to revise certain clauses within an anti-graft law that was ruled constitutional last week. Some lawmakers fear the changes could bring confusion and have an adverse impact on consumption. Kim Young-gil reports.
The ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition Minjoo Party of Korea are calling for revisions to the so-called Kim Young-nan law, which was ruled constitutional last week. Under the new law, civil servants, journalists, and private school faculty are barred from receiving individual gifts of goods or services worth more than $900 each, or a combined $2,700 a year. The two parties say the law should exclude agriculture, fisheries, and livestock products, as the price limits could dent consumption and generally have a negative impact on the country's provincial economy.
We asked the government to prepare for the implementation of the Kim Young-nan law. We also asked the government to amend the ordinance to help businesses in the agriculture, fisheries, and livestock sector.
If there are going to be losses among the small and medium-sized businesses in the agriculture and fisheries sectors, then the government should consider revising the ordinance.
In addition, Minjoo Party floor leader Woo Sang-ho specifically called to change the limits on the value of meals that can be accepted from $27 to $45, and to raise the value of special occasion gifts or cash from $45 to $90. However, the minor opposition People's Party called for the law to be implemented as is, saying that revisions can be made in the future.
Since the Constitutional Court upheld the anti-graft law, it should first be implemented as planned. After it goes into effect, we can make revisions where necessary. There shouldn't be movements to oppose the law.
The left-leaning opposition Justice Party echoed the view. The law is scheduled to take effect on September 28th. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Some of the victims of a toxic humidifier disinfectant made by Oxyrec and Benkiser have rejected the company's compensation plan. In a statement Monday, the group said the compensation package fails to reflect their opinion, and the company is just looking for a quick fix. Under the plan laid out on Sunday, the British-based firm vowed to cover the victims' medical expenses and provide up to $315,000 to the families of adults who died or were seriously harmed, and nearly $900,000 for infants and children. Korea's exports are back to double-digit drops, but there might be some light at the end of the tunnel as the figures could improve towards the latter half of the year. Kim Min-ji looks beyond the discouraging numbers.
Korea's exports took another dive in July, extending the downward trend to a record 19th straight month. The Trade Ministry says outbound shipments tumbled 10.2% from a year ago to $41 billion. There had been some hope for recovery after the pace of decline had slowed for the previous 2 months, but July's figure puts the drop back in double digits seen earlier in the year. Still, the fall was mainly attributed to temporary factors, such as fewer working days in the month, as well as a slump in ship exports.
When excluding temporary factors, the pace of decline in average daily exports in July was the lowest this year, so we believe it has maintained its recovery momentum.
But a spike in computer shipments and a slowing contraction in Korea's key export items, such as flat panel displays and petroleum goods, weren't enough to prop up the overall figures. Making matters worse, exports of ships plunged more than 40% on year due to delays in delivery, while shipments of cars also slid due to slow demand in emerging markets and strikes, which took a toll on production. Imports, on the other hand, fell 14% on year to $33.3 billion, also nosediving for the 19th straight month. With that, the trade surplus came to $7.8 billion in July, extending the surplus streak to 54 straight months. For the latter half of the year, the general consensus is that figures will gradually improve.
Although it's hard to say things are on a track of recovery, the pace of decline will slow, since it doesn't seem that oil prices will fall much further. Also, releases of new tech products will likely boost exports, and there'll also be a base effect as outbound shipments fell a lot last year.
As for unfavorable conditions ahead, experts cite a supply glut from China, as well as a slowdown in emerging economies. Rather than providing industries with general measures to boost overall exports, analysts say the government needs to provide more customized support so companies can come up with new items that other countries have yet to develop. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Taking a look at some stock market action now. Korean shares closed higher on Monday, while the Korean won rose to the highest level against the U.S. dollar since June 2015. This comes as trading hours were extended by 30 minutes starting Monday at the stock, foreign exchange, and gold markets. The benchmark Kospi opened over 0.4% higher on Monday from Friday's close and maintained its upward streak throughout the day, closing at 2029 as foreign investors extended their purchases due to weak signs of a possible rate hike in the U.S. Tech-heavy Kosdaq closed at 703, down 0.4%, while the Korean won closed at 1,108 against the greenback. That's down 12.2 from the previous session's close. The Islamic State militant group calls for more terror attacks against Christians through its propaganda magazine. This follows the killing of a priest in France, which has sparked fears ISIS wants to incite a religious war. Lee Ji-won has the full story.
The Islamic State militant group has called for more terror attacks against Christians. The cover of the latest issue of the group's Dabiq magazine, released on Sunday, shows an ISIS member ripping a cross off the roof of a church with the title "Break the Cross." In the magazine, ISIS calls on others to join the terror group and for its members in Western countries to attack Christians without hesitation, citing the latest attacks by jihadists in Orlando, France, Germany, and Bangladesh as examples. The magazine also seeks to explain the group's recent terror attacks and suggests the cross worshippers and democratic pagans of the West should repent by abandoning Christianity and accepting Islam. The militant group also urges its members to target Pope Francis, saying he's hiding behind a deceptive veil of goodwill toward Muslims. On Sunday, Pope Francis said Muslims are not to blame for the terror attacks and that not all Muslims are violent when asked about the two men who pledged alliance to ISIS while killing a French priest last week.
I don't think it's right to identify Islam with violence. This is not just and it is not true.
The magazine's release comes amid a heightened state of alert in Europe and the US after the killing of the French priest and a string of other ISIS-inspired attacks. Analysts see the statements as part of the militant group's efforts to cast itself as a protector of Muslims and incite a religious conflict between Christians and Muslims. However, there are already reports of efforts by members of both religions to practice a spirit of openness toward one another while pledging not to give in to fear. Muslims and Christians came together at an event on Sunday to pray for the victims of the recent shooting in Munich that left 9 people dead. Muslims also participated in a mass on Friday held at a church close to where the French priest was killed, as well as services in churches around Europe. 이지원, Arirang News.
Turning to a glass ceiling breaking event in Japan, the capital has elected its first ever female governor. Yuriko Koike, who ran as an independent, claimed victory in Sunday's election despite taking the plunge without the ruling Liberal Democratic Party's consent. The former defense minister garnered over 2.8 million votes, leaving her top 2 rivals in the dust with a margin of more than 1 million votes. The election, contested by a field of 21 candidates, was called after Tokyo's former governor resigned over a financial scandal. As governor, the 64-year-old Koike will handle Tokyo's preparations for the 2020 Olympics. Quite a challenge considering how the event has been plagued by scandals and numerous budgetary concerns. Speaking of the Olympics, hosting the Summer Games is proving to be quite a grave challenge for Rio. It's been one incident after another raising questions about the country's readiness for the global games. Kwon Jang-ho has the latest.
The main ramp of Rio's Olympic sailing venue partially collapsed on Sunday after bad weather and high tides hit the coast over the weekend. Although no one was injured and organisers have tried to assure the public event will not be affected, it raises further doubts about Rio's construction standards, let alone its readiness for the Games. The bad weather also hit Copacabana Beach, flooding TV studios near the volleyball arena.
Look here. These types of crashing waves, they always happen here. They've picked the worst place they could.
The athletes' village has also come under recent criticism, with the Australian team refusing to move into their accommodations last week, describing blocked toilets, leaking pipes and exposed wiring. The team has since moved in, but perhaps they might have been better off staying away. 2 laptops and some team shirts were stolen while the team was being evacuated due to a fire in the basement. To make matters worse, the team discovered that their fire alarms had been turned off due to construction next door.
Obviously that's completely unacceptable, A, that the fire alarm was disabled, and B, that if it had to be, that we weren't warned about that.
Meanwhile, the IOC is finding itself continually having to defend its controversial decision to allow Russia to participate in the Games, after the McLaren report last month revealed Russian authorities had overseen a state-sponsored doping program.
You cannot deprive any human being, and in particular, I think, not an athlete for whom we are responsible, of the right to at least be given the opportunity to prove his or her innocence.
Rio's health authorities are also having to fend off concerns about the Zika virus, and they're giving assurances that there is minimal risk with no signs that the disease is spreading. They've also had to fend off questions about the water quality at water sports events.
Lots of athletes and lots of people have already been using these areas for training and leisure over the last year. We have not registered one single health case related to the waters.
And all this is going on against a backdrop of political unrest. Members of the Brazilian public took to the streets in Rio on Sunday to protest against government corruption and advocate for the impeachment of suspended President Dilma Rousseff. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Coming back to South Korea, the nation has seen its share of heat wave watches this summer, and Seoul has already had more than twice the number of tropical nights this year compared to last. The reason for the extreme temperatures is a phenomenon known as a heat dome. Yoon Shin explains further.
The central part of the country, including the capital of Seoul and the coasts, have been suffering under a heat wave almost like no other. According to the Korea Meteorological Administration on Monday, Korea has already had 4 more days with heat wave warnings this year than last. The highs in the east-central city of Pohang and the southern cities of Daegu and Changwon in July all reached over 36 degrees Celsius. Experts say the root cause of the sweltering days and tropical nights is a phenomenon known as a heat dome. A heat dome happens when an anticyclone or highly compressed air blocks air circulation and causes hot air to sink. As the sinking air gets compressed even further, it creates a dome of heat. This heat dome is driven by the expansion of North Pacific High, a kind of anticyclone containing highly compressed air. The air trapped in the dome affects the entire nation, creating the scorching conditions Korea is seeing now, even though the country is in the middle of the monsoon season.
As the blistering hot weather continues through August, bringing more tropical nights, the nation can expect to see some record high temperatures this year.
Under the effects of the heat dome, experts also project that the country could see a record number of tropical nights since the year 2000. Many more heat wave warnings are expected throughout the rest of the season, so area residents, especially children and the elderly, are advised to take preventive measures to avoid heat stroke and other heat-related illnesses. Yoon-shin, Arirang News.
That's all we have for you at this hour. For more updates, do tune in at 10 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.